Less than 3 years after his victory over Donald Trump was meant to bring the nation back to normal and bring people together, President Joe Biden launched a re-election campaign unlike any other on Tuesday, urging voters to support him once more to save democracy. Biden's campaign for a second term will take place in what would typically be extremely unfavorable conditions, with his approval rating hovering in the low 40s, and the nation worn out by a series of crises after pandemic isolation gave way to a struggle with skyrocketing inflation. According to polls, the majority of voters, including the majority of Democrats, oppose his candidacy. And a rematch between Biden and the 45th president, who is currently in office, seems to be the last thing the nation wants. But Biden's campaign's main justification stems from Trump's popularity among Republicans. According to the incumbent, he is Democrats' best chance of preventing his predecessor from winning a second term, which would undoubtedly be even more erratic than the first. Joe Biden, the Democratic candidate for president at the time, and Donald Trump take part in the final presidential debate at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, in this image from October 2020. After a career in politics, Biden is starting his final campaign from a place of low expectations, which is familiar to him. But by portraying himself as the antidote to Republican extremism, he has consistently defied conventional political wisdom and won over swing voters. Biden paradoxically seems strong enough to fend off the emergence of any significant primary challengers, despite the fact that much of his party seems to wish it had an alternative. On Tuesday, 4 years to the day after beginning what was then viewed as a remote effort to realize a White House dream that had been first sparked by an unsuccessful race for the 1988 Democratic nomination, the president officially launched his re-election campaign with the release of a campaign video. 4 years ago, when I ran for president, I declared that a battle for America's soul was underway. And we still are, he declared in the video, which began with shots of the January 6, 2021 uprising, and demonstrators for abortion rights outside the U.S. Supreme Court. In his video, Biden made it clear that he would rather campaign against Republican MAGA extremism, which he painted as a serious threat to both democracy and the right to an abortion, than on his record as president. The video depicted Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, possibly his most dangerous opponent in the GOP primary race, as identical radical Republican leaders. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, a far-right Georgia Republican, was also highlighted. In order to protect American democratic and individual freedoms as well as Social Security retirement benefits, Biden vowed to keep fighting. Biden stated, "That's been the work of my first term, to fight for our democracy," and he cautioned against becoming complacent at this time. In response, the Republican National Committee released a video of its own, which painted a dystopian picture of a world and country in chaos under a second term for Biden, plagued by war, a border crisis, rampant crime, and a domestic financial collapse. "Who's in charge here?" was the final line of the video. The train seems to be leaving the tracks. Surprisingly, Trump's threat to U.S. democratic institutions and values, which drove Biden to run for president in 2020, will also be the driving force behind his re-election campaign. In his shadow campaign for an unannounced 2024 run, Biden has railed against MAGA extremism and used the same argument to support a surprising Democratic showing in the 2022 midterm elections. Before the first Republican primary ballots are cast, it will be several months. Furthermore, Americans will choose their next president more than 18 months from now. Future occurrences in the US and abroad could alter the race. Everything could change if Biden, Trump, and the other few GOP candidates take unanticipated turns in their personal and professional lives. Additionally, recent elections have demonstrated that punditry and polling often fail to predict unexpected outcomes. However, current events are creating a distinctive presidential race that reflects the nation's polarized, unrest-ridden state, and is likely to again put political institutions and American unity in jeopardy. Elections are frequently used in this country to empower young people. However, it is currently considering the possibility of a contest between an incumbent who would be 86 by the end of his second term, and a challenger who would be 82 at that time. The oldest combined matchup in U.S. presidential history would likely be welcomed by Biden, as the optics of a contest against a more youthful opponent, such as Florida's Republican governor Ron DeSantis, who has not yet announced his candidacy, could change the tone of the race. In an even more astonishing turn, Trump is attempting to repeat a feat only once before in U.S. history, when Grover Cleveland served non-consecutive terms after he was elected. Presidents who are ousted after serving only one term typically retire and don't challenge their victor. But even after tearing the Republican Party away from its corporate roots and transforming it into a populist platform for conservative culture wars, Trump continues to hold the most sway within the party. Even more unbelievable, Trump is making an attempt to run for office again after resigning in disgrace after being twice impeached for abusing his position. Then, in an effort to retain power, he refused to accept the decisions made by voters in 2020 and instigated an uprising. In his inaugural address, Biden said, "We have learned again that democracy is precious, democracy is fragile. At this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed." This was 2 weeks after Trump's mob stormed Congress. The reality of a country caught in an existential struggle over its institutions and still reeling from the effects of the most turbulent presidency and ex-presidency in history is reflected in Biden's decision to run for re-election, while warning that democracy is in danger. Trump's threat to democracy has actually grown, which will be important to Biden's campaign. He pledges to dismantle the professional civil service in Washington and the Justice Department, which he says is persecuting him on account of his political views. Trump issued a warning last month at his first campaign event in Waco, Texas, saying, "Either the deep state destroys America or we destroy the deep state." He vowed to rid the legal system of thugs and criminals, and said, chillingly, "I am your warrior. I am justice for you."